Good day and welcome to this Focus On with myself, Dewald Rademeyer. The 2024 U.S Africa Business Summit is approaching fast, and for the first time in 3 years, it will return to the United States soil, attracting over 1,500 U.S and African public and private sectors, including heads of states and investors, and under the theme Partnering for Sustainable Success. This year's summit's objective is to connect key decision makers from both regions to find solutions to today's global business challenges. Fleury Lizer, President and CEO of Corporate Council U.S Africa, joins me now from the United States to tell us more about this year's summit. Fleury, I want to go straight into this. As mentioned in the introduction, for the first time in 3 years, you're taking this back to United States. It was in Botswana last year, Morocco the year before. I just want to get your thinking behind this.
Well, actually the summit used to be years ago held every other year, U.S., and then 2 years later, we would be on the continent. And then there was such a demand for people to get together and collaborate on U.S. Africa trade, investment, and business that the board of directors of CCA decided to have a summit every year so that we could be on the continent every other year. But then following COVID, there was a lot of pent up demand to come together. And so we went to Morocco in 2022. And even though initially we had thought we would come back to the US in 2023, there was such demand, especially post-COVID, to get together again on the continent that we decided to go to Botswana. And so now there was no way we could do it again on the continent for the third year in a row. So we are going to Dallas, and we're very excited about that because the last time that we had a summit in Washington, a summit in the US, it was in Washington, D.C. And so it's been many years since we have been outside of the Beltway, as we call it here, to take the summit to Middle America, and where many of the corporates are, including many members of CCA.
Now, Fleury, this U.S. Africa Business Summit comes at a time where there's an increase or influx of geopolitical tensions. I just want to understand how this summit will springboard conversations to renew partnerships.
Well, I think in the post-COVID, we'll say post-COVID period, there has really been a focus on new opportunities in key value chains all around the world. I think that people recognize that many of the supply chains broke down during COVID with, heavy reliance on just a few countries or companies in key places, and that this then is a perfect time for corporates to really build in more supply chain resiliency. And we have heard from many of them that they are looking at Africa as a place where they can do that producing various products and inputs, not just the final products, but the intermediary products in Africa makes a lot of sense, especially because Africa has now launched the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is, after the WTO, the largest free trade area in the world, really. And so with, 54 countries, a continent of 1.3 billion people, and $3.4 trillion in combined GDP, and not to talk, not to only look at that, but also a key place for labor. You look at the bulging youth demography of Africa. Africa offers a lot. It not only has that, but when you look at the resources, the natural resources, not just the human resources that Africa has, many of the critical minerals, cobalt and chromium and all of these critical minerals that are in Africa, and they have more than 60% of the world's arable land that has not yet been cultivated. So, we could go down the list and talk about all the opportunities that are offered on the continent of Africa and by the African people, that really America has a lot that it can take advantage of now. So bringing people together at the summit in Dallas to talk about all of these opportunities, to bring together the key decision makers, both government and private sector, to look at these partnerships, I think is great. And some of those issues you're talking about, to be honest, there are probably no major global issues that can be resolved without working with Africa. If you're looking at climate change, you've got to work with Africa. If you're looking at education and making sure that the people of the world, the children of the world are educated, you've got to look at Africa. If you're looking at supply chain resiliency, you've got to look at Africa. They're just, feeding the world, food security. You got to work with Africa if you want to address that. So the summit really provides an excellent platform and opportunity for the United States to sit down with our partners in Africa and look at these challenges, including some of the ones you mentioned.
Last year, the U.S. Africa Business Summit in Botswana, there were particular investment areas which were presented to investors. Are there different areas this time around that speaks more to sustainable living?
Well, to be frank, Africa has so much to offer across many sectors. I mean, if you start with agriculture and agribusiness, the U.S. is a great partner for them there. We've done a lot of things in improving agricultural productivity and could really partner well with the Africans who still are maybe not at the top of their game in terms of agricultural productivity, and also in the value addition and processing that is necessary to connect farms to markets, or they used to call it farm to fork, right? So agribusiness, ICT and digital. This is an incredible time, especially in the age of artificial intelligence. This is an incredible time, given what's been happening on the continent in the digitalization age. A lot is happening there in Africa. So many of the ICT and transformative technologies, Africa is doing quite well in that. They have more ICT and digital startups in Nigeria, for example, than in any other place, any other country in the world, just as an example. But all across Africa, Kenya, Togo, all of them, Botswana, they are all focused on digitalization. And the African Union heads of state, just in last month when we were in Addis Ababa, they approved the new AFCFTA digital trade protocol. And this is going to get at a lot of the issues that are impacting digital trade all across the world, including for many of CCA's member companies in that important space. So, digital, agribusiness, critical minerals, this is another area, as I said, where if you're going to have the growth of EV, electric vehicles, and the batteries and all that's needed to grow that industry, you're going to have to work with the Africans on that. And there are people who have some really great ideas about the kinds of tax incentives that should be given so that companies here in the U.S., whether it's, Toyota, but, talking Toyota U.S., Tesla, Ford and others would be incentivized to process some of the critical minerals that Africa has right there on the continent, rather than shipping those products to China, for the most part, for processing. Why not do it there on the ground in Africa where those products are?
Floria, as we bring this conversation to a close, I just want to touch back on the main theme of this year's summit, which is partnering for sustainable success. What is so particularly special about this theme?
Well, I just want to share that we are partnering with the Millennium Challenge Corporation, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary. and has been investing in Africa. Over 18 countries in Africa, over $11 billion has been invested there, largely in projects that support sustainable development on the continent. And I have to mention that because we are having a major event with them during which former President George Bush will be a part of that, along with African heads of state from Millennium Challenge Corporation countries. So starting with that, the concept of sustainable economic development on the continent, I think that that's important. And we have a number of sessions that will also be looking at energy transition on the continent. What do we do in terms of investing in not only oil and gas, but really in the renewables in the energy sector? We have to look at how we can provide access to power in Africa using what they have, but making sure that we also meet global climate change goals as well. And so that's a part of the sustainable piece of this. We have U.S. government agencies like the U.S. Export-Import Bank, which recently funded a $900 million project in Angola. And we are excited. We believe that the president of Angola will be joining us there. We already have 3 heads of state who have confirmed from Botswana, Malawi, and Angola. And we're very excited about that. And Togo has also confirmed. But we're hoping that the chair of Exim Bank, Chair Rita Jo Lewis, will also be at the summit and will be talking about some of the investments that they're making in sustainable and renewable energy on the continent. But again, we're welcoming so many there. DFC will be there, Department of Commerce, U.S. Trade Representative's Office, State Department, and Commerce Department, and so many others. So again, we welcome both public and private sector to join us there. And again, we think that we'll be bringing the best of what Africa has to offer to the United States and its global partners with the best that America has to offer Africa.
And that's how we bring this conversation to a close. I'd like to thank my guest, Fleury Liza, President and CEO of Corporate Council on Africa. And that's it from me from today. Until next time, it's goodbye.